Next we're going to talk about stamping. When we talk about stamping, we can stamp pieces that we've made. So you can take pieces that you've made on the wheel, and once they've dried a little bit, you can stamp the surface to do something extra with the surface, like that's different than adding on with sprigs. We can also do this with our slab built forms that allows us to have some sort of texture onto the surface of the slab once we form it into whatever it's going to be. When we do stamping though, we always want to stamp with slabs, we always want to stamp before we make the form. With a wheel thrown pot, we can stamp. We have to be really careful though that we don't disfigure the pot, because when you stamp into the clay, that clay that you're stamping has to go someplace. So when you have that you're dealing with a slab, it's a little bit easier because you can always cut later on. You can use the part that you need and then cut off what you want. With a wheel thrown pot, it's not as easy because that clay does have to go someplace and it's a little bit harder to cut off later. So for this, I'm going to demonstrate stamping on a slab that I'm eventually going to use to show you how to make a platter using a mold. So we've got some different types of stamps. We've got some stamps that were made out of coils or extruded coils that were just carved into the end of the stamp. You can do a lot of different things with these, and you can make a lot of different shapes. And you can do personalized stamps. A lot of people will make their signature stamp this way, that they stamp on the bottom of all their pots. The other types of stamps, there's commercially produced stamps that you can buy and use. The other thing we can do is we can always make and print 3D print stamps. So I can print letters and numbers on some of these. I can print designs. I can just print kind of general shapes that I want. So if I want a pyramid shape for my indent, or if I want kind of a rounded half circle shape, or more of a pointed rounded shape, I can do that as well. So we can make custom stamps and print them if there's something that you don't want. You can also carve your own stamps that once they're fired work pretty well. With these though, you have to really plan ahead because they should be fired before you stamp your material with it. So I am going to start stamping my slab here that I rolled out that I'm going to use for a platter. I'm going to use these square stamps. And when I do this, I'm just going to use a little bit of pressure to press it into the clay. I'm not really putting too much pressure with my hand on the clay. I'm just resting it there so that I have a good base for making my checkerboard here. The stamps are nice because they add a real texture to the piece as you're working on it, so that you can, when you glaze it, that glaze either pools or breaks in certain spots, either exposing the clay or making a completely different color with the glaze than you expected. And it gives more of a physical texture, a tactile texture that you can really feel and hold on to on the pots that you make. You can also combine your stamps to do something different. So if I have this concave half circle, I can take this and I can press it so that I start to have a little bit of a dome shape. Again, I don't want to press too far because I don't want to cut through my clay. And then I can always take this other stamp and work out from the one that I already made. Some of this takes a little bit of planning ahead of time. Some of it you can kind of make up as you go. Always make sure you line them up. Okay, so you can create some stamp textures, or you can do just kind of completed ones. The 3D stamps work pretty nice because the plastic doesn't really stick to the clay all that well. You can also sometimes get a little bit more detail with them than you can with the carved ones. Unless you're able to really get some good detailed carving done. Sometimes the carved ones don't leave you a whole lot of detail. Like it's pretty generic in some cases. Okay, so I have my stamped surface, and you can combine them. You can choose a certain pattern. If I wanted to, I could lay a template out here so that I know where my pattern's going to be, kind of on my completed image or on my completed plate or completed project. So feel free to use stamps on different things. You can use them on pretty much anything. You could use them for the background on your nameplate. You could use them on the raku platters, which are really nice because it adds that texture that you can do different glazes on. You can also use them on the exterior of your coil pots to just add a little something extra to the surface. So that's how we can apply stamps to different things to just change up our surface a little bit.